The air in the alien station was dense, the quiet before a storm. Outside the massive observation windows, the stars glowed in their unchanging brilliance. But inside the holding cells, the atmosphere had thickened into something more dangerous. Anticipation. The human prisoner, sitting on the cold metal floor, leaned back against the wall, with his hands casually resting behind his head, an expression of calm amusement on his face. The guards didn't know what to make of him. They had seen hundreds of prisoners, many of them from species far more advanced and deadly than Earth's humanity. But this one was different. He didn't cower, didn't beg, didn't even show the fear that every other species had when they were captured. He just smiled, that damn unsettling smile. "Who does he think he is?" one of the guards muttered as he watched the human through the monitoring screen. "We've broken entire fleets with far less effort." "Keep him contained," came the cold voice of the commander from the other side of the room. "We'll extract the information soon enough." But even the commander couldn't shake the gnawing feeling in his gut. There was something about this human, a quiet arrogance in his calm, his gaze that never wavered from theirs. It was as if the man was waiting for something. But what? The human prisoner, whose name they had learned was Jake, seemed oblivious to the tension around him. He shifted slightly, the shackles clinking softly as he adjusted his position. Then, to everyone's surprise, he smiled wider. "I'll be seeing you soon," he said quietly, almost to himself. One of the guards scoffed. "Keep dreaming, human. You're as good as dead." Jake didn't respond, his gaze still fixed on the guards with an almost eerie calm. Then, in a move that seemed almost too casual, he tilted his head back and whispered, just loud enough for them to hear, "You really have no idea, do you?" There was a brief moment of stillness. The silence felt too heavy, too charged. Then everything happened in the blink of an eye. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the room. A strange hum filled the air, a vibration that seemed to reverberate through the very walls of the station. The guards looked around, confusion spreading like wildfire. "What's happening?" one of them barked, reaching for his weapon. The hum grew louder, and then, as if in response to the human's smile, the entire station shuddered violently. The walls groaned, and the floor tilted beneath their feet. "Sir, there's a power surge," shouted a tech officer from across the room, panic in his voice. Before anyone could react, the station's gravity systems failed. The sudden weightlessness caused chaos. Guards floated, weapons lost their grip, and everything not bolted to the ground began to drift into the air. Jake's shackles broke free, the chains snapping as if they were made of paper. He pushed off from the ground with ease, his feet hovering above the cold metal floor as he grinned. "Didn't I tell you?" Jake said, his voice smooth and dangerous, his smile widening. "I'll be seeing you soon." The commander, now floating helplessly in the air, snarled. "What have you done?" he demanded, eyes wild with panic. Jake's eyes flicked to him with an unsettling calmness. "Nothing at all," he replied, almost bemused. "I just smiled." The truth hit the alien commanders like a cold wave. This human, this prisoner they thought they could break, had somehow triggered the entire station's gravity system to fail. It wasn't an accident, it wasn't a malfunction, it was deliberate, and worse yet, it was simple. The commander's mind raced. The technology aboard the station was advanced, far beyond anything humanity had ever dreamed of. How could one human, one prisoner, have such control over something so complex? "Send reinforcements," the commander ordered, his voice shaking. But it was too late. The gravity failure had already spread through the station, shutting down power. Systems, throwing everything into disarray. Panic spread like wildfire, with personnel floating uncontrollably and systems failing faster than they could respond. Jake, with his hands behind his head, floated toward the nearest window, gazing out into the endless void of space. The stars were silent witnesses to the chaos he had just unleashed. His smile was the only thing that seemed unaffected, and it was a smile full of cold, terrifying satisfaction. "You're not getting anything from me," Jake said, almost as if the commander's desperate orders didn't matter. "I'm just here to let you know Earth's not as weak as you think." From the control center, a frantic officer shouted, "The central core's offline! The station's power grid is collapsing!" Jake's smile never faltered. It was the kind of smile that said, "I told you so," without needing to speak the words. The commander, realizing the extent of the chaos, barked one final order: "Secure the prisoner, we can't—" But before he could finish, the entire station jolted violently. Lights flashed, alarms blared, and the sound of systems failing could be heard in every corridor. The final blow had come. The station, now uncontrollable, spiraled into a slow, inevitable descent into chaos. Jake's eyes flicked back to the commander. "You should have listened." In the chaos, the alien commander and his crew had no choice but to watch in helpless disbelief as their precious station, their symbol of power, began to crumble, its systems ripped apart by a single human smile, and that was before Earth even responded. The human prisoner was now suspended in the weightless environment of the alien space station, his eyes scanning the chaos that had erupted all around him. Guards, who were once so sure of their superiority, floated aimlessly, struggling to regain control, their weapons useless as they drifted in the zero gravity. The power systems hummed erratically, unable to stabilize, and every flicker of light seemed to intensify the panic that was spreading like wildfire. Jake, the human prisoner, smirked. His shackles had snapped off easily when the gravity failed, their once strong bonds no match for the subtle manipulation he had triggered. It wasn't that he had broken the system. No, it was far simpler than that. It was a matter of understanding the pulse of the station, the delicate balance of systems that the alien minds had never considered to be vulnerable. With a slight mental nudge, he had thrown everything into disarray. The station was theirs, for the taking. The silent smirk that spread across Jake's face was not a sign of arrogance, but one of quiet triumph. He had outsmarted them, and they didn't even know how. The commander, still struggling to float in the disorienting zero gravity, finally regained some semblance of order, his breathing labored, his panic subsiding only slightly. "Activate. Gravity control immediately," he barked into the comms. "Now!" But the words held no weight, for Jake knew that the alien systems were already corrupted. The more they tried to fix things, the more chaotic it would become. There was no escaping the trap now. "Sir, the system's locked out," came a panicked voice from the tech officer, whose face was visible through the disorienting hum of flashing lights and floating bodies. "I can't get in. The access codes are corrupted. We've been locked out of all critical systems." A chill ran through the commander's spine. His worst fears were now reality. They had tried to intimidate Jake, tried to break him. But instead, they had unleashed a force they couldn't control, and it was becoming clear this was only the beginning. Jake, still floating casually, began to move through the debris-filled space, his body languid and relaxed, as if he were walking through the park on a lazy afternoon. The commotion of the station's falling systems, the shouting and the cries for help didn't seem to bother him in the least. He moved toward the central core's viewing window, gazing out into the dark void of space. "You know," he said, his voice eerily calm in the midst of chaos, "it's funny how you guys always underestimate humanity." He glanced over his shoulder, catching the eyes of the now fumbling guards. "I mean, you really thought you had it all figured out, didn't you?" The commander's face twisted in rage, but his voice trembled as he tried to assert control. "You're a fool, human. You're in my station now. You can't just smile." Jake interrupted with a grin, watching the confusion spread among the crew. "It's amazing what a smile can do. All those years of technological advancement, and it all crumbles because I decided to smile." The alien commander's mouth opened, but the words seemed to catch in his throat. He had underestimated Jake. No, he had underestimated Earth. For all their supposed superiority, the aliens had not anticipated human creativity, their ability to find an opening in the most unlikely of places. Jake looked back toward the viewing window. The stars were serene, uncaring, but the scene inside the station was one of growing desperation. "Get him back in the cell," the commander roared, fury now creeping into his voice. "I'll have him put down, now!" But the word cell fell flat. The gravity had already altered everything. There were no cells, no place to keep him. Jake was free, and the rest of them were trapped in their own station, floating helplessly. The system was still failing, and the backup systems had already been destroyed in the initial wave of chaos. Jake floated back toward the control panels. He glanced at the officers who had been trying to fix the core, but they were now floating in a disorganized mess. Their efforts in vain. One of them, panic-stricken, floated by and reached for a nearby weapon, only to drop it, watching it float away into the void. "You should have tried listening to me," Jake said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Would have saved you all a lot of trouble." The commander tried to grab the comms controls, his hand clumsily missing the panel as he drifted by. "Shut him up!" he screamed, his voice growing more and more desperate. Jake shook his head. "Oh, I'm sorry, did I say something?" He glanced back at the commander, still floating in his suit, trying to push against the walls for stability. "Here's the thing, though. No matter how hard you try, you're not going to fix this. You're not going to put things back to the way they were. The station is done, and so are you." The commander's rage flared again, his face red as his hand desperately gripped onto a floating console. "You'll die in here with us. Do you think your human tricks can save you? You're just a prisoner, a plaything for our amusement." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Well, I guess we'll see, won't we?" The station continued to lose its systems. One by one, the lights flickering and dying, the atmosphere inside growing, thick with tension. In a corner, another officer began to scream, his voice carrying through the corridors. The lack of gravity made it impossible to predict where anyone would end up. The systems were beyond saving now. The damage was too severe. Jake had done more than just disable the gravity. He had cracked the core of the station's power grid. With a final look at the commander, Jake slowly turned away and made his way towards the massive docking bay window. Outside, space stretched on, beautiful and uncaring. There were no fleets, no alien empires, just the endless void. "You know," Jake spoke again, his tone thoughtful now, "I always wanted to see the stars. Too bad it's going to be a bit darker soon." The station shook again, this time with greater force, a final reminder that the station, along with its arrogance, was nearing its end. "Before you ask," Jake called out casually, his grin widening again, "this wasn't my idea, but I'm glad I could be the one to send you a little message." The alien commander could do nothing but watch as Jake floated to the window, his last words hanging in the air like a poisoned arrow. It was too late. There was no stopping the damage Jake had done. And as the station continued its descent into failure, the truth set in. Humanity wasn't a joke, and they didn't need to win every battle. They just needed to win the ones that mattered. The stars outside shimmered, as if acknowledging humanity's first real strike back. And that was before Earth even responded. The station trembled again, the walls groaning as if the entire structure were buckling under its own weight. The air was thick with the scent of burning circuits and the crackle of failing equipment. Everywhere Jake looked, chaos reigned. The once pristine control rooms with their advanced alien technology were now strewn with floating debris, sparks, hugging from panels, and panicked officers scrambling to regain control. Jake floated lazily near the shattered window, staring out into the abyss of space. His eyes flicked to the deadening stars, the calmness of the void, a stark contrast to the madness inside the station. He had broken them. No amount of high-tech weaponry, no superhuman force could have done what a simple human smile had accomplished. His hand brushed his face as if to reaffirm that it was indeed just a smile, a gesture so harmless, yet so devastating. "How did you do it?" The voice of the alien commander pierced through the disarray, strained and desperate. The commander floated near the remains of the command console, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. He was a towering figure, the epitome of an alien species that had conquered worlds, and yet now helpless in the face of a mere human. Jake's smile never faltered. "I didn't do anything, really. I just knew where to push. Just a little smile, a little nudge, and everything you thought you understood about your precious station fell apart." He twirled in the zero gravity, his movement smooth and effortless. "You've been too focused on your technology, your power, your weapons, and you've forgotten something simple." The commander's eyes narrowed, but the fear was palpable. Beneath his anger, "You'll regret this, human. You may have disabled the station, but you'll never leave here alive. We'll come for you, and we'll make you pay." Jake turned, his feet lightly pushing off the station's wall as he faced the commander with a casual expression. "I don't think you're getting it," he said softly. "You're the one who's trapped. You think your empire will just fix this? That? You'll send reinforcements and magically restore control? You won't." The commander's fists clenched, but his body floated helplessly, caught in the zero-gravity field. "You'll never understand, human. You've only delayed the inevitable. The Empire will come for you, and you'll wish you'd never—" "Jake." He cut him off, his voice a calm interruption. "You think your Empire is the inevitable force of the universe? You've just learned something important today. It's not. Your empire will fall because you didn't prepare for something like this. You didn't expect humanity to fight back the way we do. We don't need fancy weapons or ships. We need ingenuity. We need willpower, and I've just shown you that." The commander's face twisted with fury, but deep down he knew Jake was right. He had underestimated Earth, underestimated humanity, and it had cost him and his entire fleet. No empire, no matter how technologically advanced, could ever defeat that kind of raw will. "We won't be the ones who fall," the commander growled. But his words lacked conviction. "Others will come. Others will crush you." Jake shook his head slowly, the weight of his calmness in the midst of the chaos almost unsettling. "The thing is," he began, his voice now quieter, more contemplative, "you've already lost. You might not see it yet, but the battle's already over. The damage is done. Your empire, your station, they've all crumbled under their own arrogance. It wasn't even the strength of humanity that won. It was the fact that you couldn't understand something so simple, so human." The commander tried to push forward, his movements stiff and futile in the weightless environment. But Jake simply watched him, his gaze unwavering, as the station continued to shudder. The gravity systems were completely offline now, and the station's internal systems were irreparably damaged. The alien empire had been brought to its knees, not by superior firepower, but by human resourcefulness, by the most unlikely of weapons, a simple, defiant smile. As the station's systems began to sputter and die, Jake allowed himself one last look at the chaos he had caused. The station's once proud walls now felt fragile, like the remnants of a world that had never understood what it was up against. Humanity wasn't just another species to be wiped away, another blip on the radar of galactic conquest. They were a force, a simple force that had just started making its presence known. Jake pushed off the wall once more, his body floating toward the damage control center, where the alien commander still struggled. "You'll get it soon enough," Jake said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of a promise. "When Earth decides to respond, it won't be with your kind of might. It'll be with something far worse." The commander's lips twisted into a snarl, but there was nothing left he could do. There were no reinforcements, no way to fix what had been broken. His empire had lost control, and no amount of boasting or threats could change that. Jake was right. The human smile had done its damage, and the station was falling apart, one system at a time, as it echoed the defeat of an empire that had underestimated humanity's power. The lights flickered one final time before going dark, and the vast silence of space seemed to close in. The battle for the galaxy had just begun, and Earth's message was clear. The alien station was now a graveyard of its former glory. The flashing lights, once symbols of control and power, had long since faded. What was left of the station floated, aimlessly, suspended in the cold void of space. Systems had failed, and the once unstoppable force of the alien empire now seemed impotent, helpless against the quiet force of a single human. Jake floated in the silence, his smile still in place. Though it was now more somber than triumphant, the chaos had calmed, but it was the calm of inevitability. The station, as advanced as it was, could not recover. The Empire's pride, its technology, its weapons, none of it mattered in the face of something so simple, so human. Behind him, the alien commander floated, staring at the ruins of his station. His Empire's control had slipped away, and he could do nothing but watch as it drifted into nothingness. Jake turned to the commander, his voice low but steady. "You've learned your lesson, haven't you?" The commander's rage was still, burning beneath the surface, but it was now tinged with something far worse, defeat. "You think this is over?" he spat, though it lacked conviction. "We will come for you. Your victory is meaningless." Jake didn't flinch. "Maybe, but it doesn't matter anymore. Your empire doesn't control anything here." The commander's words faded into nothing as the last of the station's systems failed. The force that had once crushed entire civilizations had been undone, not by technology, but by human will. Jake floated through the remains of the station, the commander and his soldiers drifting aimlessly behind him, powerless. With a final glance at the stars beyond the shattered window, Jake spoke one last time. "You wanted to destroy us. Instead, we've just shown you who's in control now." The station, once a symbol of alien superiority, now lay in ruin. The first strike had been made, and the galaxy would remember the name of Earth.